And welcome in. I'm Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark. This is GC Live or the Gamecock Central podcast, depending on if you're watching us live on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, or you're listening later on our Gamecock Central podcast network. Either way, appreciate you being here. Appreciate you joining us as we roll along. I see all the usual suspects are here. Russ, David Williams in the house. I don't think that's the David Williams that played running back for South Carolina, but we got a David Williams in the house. Frederick Cooper, Peter Hongwell, Kyle Jackson. Go ahead and shout everybody out that's joining us here already. And I see everybody's learning to hop on YouTube. Nothing against the other platforms, but that is the superior platform, I believe, for GC Live. So if you're on there, go ahead, do me one more favor today. What's up, Robert? Hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe on GC Live. We are, of course, as always, brought to you by AffordableMedicalUSA.com. 803-926-1493. JE says we're back for the Chris Clark post-shower show, sponsored by Irish Spring.
You're wrong, man. I will accept the Irish Spring. I'm going to tell you, this might be TMI. I have not showered at all today. Not only was it not 15 minutes before the show, I've not showered at all today because I'm going to coach my kids' soccer game here at about 5 p.m., and I will be nice and sweaty after that. So I will take a shower after that.
So that's not a freshly showered Chris hair. That is the opposite.
Nothing fresh about this. But that segment where we talked about my showering habits is sponsored by Irish Spring, or it can be.
They have paid exactly $0 to this point, so might need to bill them, I think. But we'll mix it up. We'll tell you about the game day chair a little bit later on today. But Chris, talking key matchups, and we don't have a random guest today. I'm actually working. I don't know if y'all follow, if our listeners follow SEC StatCat on Twitter. If you're into analytics at all or stats like Russ is, follow SEC StatCat on Twitter. I don't even know the dude's real name. I don't even know if he puts it out there or not, but really, really good stuff from those guys, I guess. I don't know. I don't even know. Is it multiple people? Is it one main guy? I don't know. Anyway, somebody from those guys are going to hopefully be joining us Friday. Working through that right now. We're going to try to get them on and sort of give a little bit of a different take, I would say, on South Carolina. But for today, we're just breaking down the game, continuing to look at matchups, answering your questions, and we also are going to talk a little bit of recruiting because we haven't talked a lot of recruiting this week. Recruit of the week will be later on. Spoiler alert, it's going to be somebody that's been the recruit of the week again because they continue to just put up massive numbers. And because they actually are very good about putting up their highlights as well, which makes it easy for us as far as video to get that out there too. By the way, Chris, what are you drinking over there, man?
I knew you were going to make fun. So I'm drinking green tea in homage to Josh Yellman and Pearson Fowler at 107.5 in their honor. Green tea. Need a little caffeine pick-me-up.
Okay.
Coincidentally, you can't see that.
Other way. Yep.
The Braves Cup.
Yeah, they need all the good vibes they can get. So
we're going to win by 20 runs tonight. So it's going to be great.
Yep. By the way, so Craig, what's up, Craig? He asked, let's go ahead and we'll sort of make this a very interactive show. Sometimes we plan stuff, guys. Sometimes we just hop on here and talk. I don't know if y'all can tell which days are which, but this is a hop on here and talk, be completely honest. So we'll sort of let y'all steer it, I guess. But Chris, have you seen – so I was watching – this morning I was watching Arkansas and Auburn from last week, and they were talking about this, the splits that Bo Nix has on the road versus in his friendly confines, which, I mean, this is the most Auburn dude ever. was like destined to play at Auburn.
Right.
And I think it was Matt Stinchcomb was like, well, obviously he's more comfortable here. Like he lived here his whole life, sort of. Kid was born and bred to play at Auburn. But, Craig, I haven't seen those actual numbers specifically. If you have them, feel free to shoot them over and I'll share them with everybody. But that is an interesting underlying, storyline with this. Now, granted, I think you look and obviously this ain't 80,000 people at Williams-Brice Stadium. So it's not a usual home field advantage that you would have at South Carolina any other year. But, maybe this extends beyond just crowd noise. Maybe this is about comfort level, travel. I don't know. Well, maybe I don't know what the sample size is either. Go ahead, Chris.
Sorry, I didn't mean. I thought my thing paused there, and I thought you were done. I didn't mean to interrupt you. So, Bo Nix was in Ryan Helinski's class, so 2019 class. So last year was his first year. And going back, I think he didn't start the A&M game. That was actually, what's his face? Joey Gatewood was in there some. Bo Nix did play against A&M. So last year, who they played? They played at Texas A&M, at Florida, at Arkansas, at LSU. And they actually played that neutral site game against Oregon that they won 27-21. So they beat A&M and Arkansas, very handily beat Arkansas. So the two road losses last year that I'm seeing are Florida and LSU. LSU, 3-point loss. They're the national champs. They steamrolled about everybody except Auburn, had another close one or two. And then Florida, they lost that one by 9. And then, of course, this year, Auburn lost to Georgia on the road, and Georgia's really good too. So those are the ones I saw. So what would that be? 3 road losses? Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But,
yeah, and I think apparently statistically his numbers just I don't know what it is, wins versus losses, but statistically his numbers are not as strong on the road. Now some of that, it sounds like you're playing really good competition. Numbers can tell us a lot sometimes, but other times it's just about matchups. And I think that, it's one of those things where it is sort of still a small sample size with him career-wise. And I think he's still a fairly young player.
Yeah.
We're pretty from, I think if you watch a lot of SEC ball, you're familiar with his name at least. Because he's thrown into the mix as a true freshman, much like Ryan Helinski last year. But, Bryce says numbers are numbers and they don't lie. I would say numbers can lie to you. Numbers, while factual, you can bend numbers as far as how you present them to show one thing. And also sometimes it's sort of, maybe it's correlation. It's not causation necessarily. Like it might not be that he doesn't perform on the road because he's on the road. It may be that he has not performed on the road because he's played really good defenses on the road, potentially, or really good teams and there's more pressure on you. So I don't know. That's something, it is something to watch. We'll see. But so our big thing today is we said matchups. And, I did that partially because I've already looked into this, so it was easy research for me. And we're going to say key matchups here. And it can really be phrased any way you want, Chris. So it could be a player versus a player. It could be more generalized. It could be more specific. And I'm going to give you one of mine. If you're not a Gamecock Central newsletter subscriber, another free thing you can subscribe to. The easiest way to do that would be to go to the Insiders Forum or our FGF forum and sort of check that out. Hit subscribe there. You'll get a newsletter every day that'll tell you what's going on in Gamecock Nation that day. So as part of that, we did 3 matchups today. And one of those matchups for me, Chris, was Kevin Still's blitz packages, basically, versus Colin Hill. And that for me, that's sort of multifaceted. One, Colin Hill, throughout his career, his numbers have been very, very good against the blitz. Combine that with the fact that South Carolina in pass protection has been hit or miss this year. Auburn's pass rush with just 4 guys has been hit or miss at best. More miss than hit, I think. And great athleticism at linebacker. And Kevin Still, one of the things they said in that broadcast was that Kevin Still said his 2 best pass rushers were actually his 2 linebackers. So these guys are going to be coming after Colin Hill at some point, and it's going to be up to him. It's not even necessarily always going to be a physical thing. It's going to be about knowing who your hot route is, getting guys moved around to the right spot, getting the ball out quick if you're outmatched or outnumbered. So for me, my first major key is Kevin Still and the blitz versus Colin Hill, both mentally and physically getting the football out in a hurry.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, there were some plays. There was a play against Vanderbilt where I don't remember if a pressure even came, but Colin Hill, Will Muschamp discussed it, put Nick Muse on a hot. That was a big explosive play for them. So this is where knowing the offense so well comes into play. Now you still have the aspect of, can you get the ball out? So that's going to be up to South Carolina's offensive front. It's going to be up to Colin to get up the ball out quickly, to navigate the pocket, to climb the pocket sometimes, and to not take sacks. So that's certainly a significant aspect of it. Here's one for me. I think if I'm supposed to go ahead and give mine, Auburn's perimeter play. This isn't necessarily a one-on-one. I think just perimeter play in general. South Carolina's perimeter players versus whatever Auburn presents you on the perimeter, which can be a lot, right? That can be Bo Nix scrambling around a little bit or buying some time. That can be Seth Williams, whoever he's matched up against, whether it's J.C. Horn or whether it's Johnny Dixon, whether it's Israel Mukuamu. He can obviously present you with a lot of issues because he's a big physical receiver. Is it J.J. Pegues, the 300-pound tight end, who's out there blocking in space on some screens? Anthony Schwartz, maybe the fastest player in the country. Auburn definitely has it in their offensive package to get him out on the edge, or to send him deep. They've done some things in the past with him in the run game that can certainly present you some issues. Tank Bigsby out on the edge in the perimeter. If you get him into space and get him loose, he's broken a lot of tackles this year. Sean Shivers, if he's back, one of their small running backs who can really make things happen on the perimeter. I think that's where we've seen some weaknesses for South Carolina this year. We saw it against Florida, one-on-one matchups. We saw it against Tennessee, some one-on-one matchups that they lost. Vanderbilt didn't have the horses to really exploit that. Auburn's got some guys that can. And so, we're talking about up-front play a lot. We're talking about third down conversion rates. Those are all important. But Auburn could come, because we've seen it, in the Tennessee game this year. They were awful on third down. They won the game because of some one-on-one matchups, a lot of them on the perimeter. So I think that's going to be a key for South Carolina in this game.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And I think there's probably, we could probably sit here and throw 10 different things out there as keys. And it's going to be, I believe, such a close game that probably any little matchup you can grab probably has a factor at some point. But yeah, I think the 2 we've mentioned are certainly big ones. And yeah, so Craig just tweeted me. These are the numbers from 2019. Craig, correct? Yes. So, I mean, and again, there could be a million reasons why, but just taking them at face value here, 59.5% completion percentage for Bo Nix last year at home, 59.5% at home, 50.5 away. So, and if you're completing just 50% of your passes, no matter what stadium you're in, that's not going to get it done, I feel like, in the SEC. Average yards per pass, 7.1 at home, 5.8 on the road. 9 touchdowns at home, 6 touchdowns on the road. Just 2 interceptions at home and 4 picks on the road. So there is a very distinguishable difference there looking back at last year. Why, or if that continues, is that just how it's played out, or is that predictive? As far as something that could happen this weekend, I don't know. And I really wonder what the average difference is between a quarterback at home and on the road, because sometimes I think your play calling is affected. Your as far as getting in and out of a play, your pass protection can be affected because of crowd noise when you're on the road and having to go silent count sometimes, and teams being able to basically time out your snap count on the road. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know, Chris, do you think that's a major factor this weekend?
Not as significant, because here's one thing. I mean, Bo Nix, 2 of those road games that we mentioned last year were against 2 really good teams, Florida and LSU, and LSU struggled on defense this year, but last year they were pretty good. They're certainly great on offense, but they were pretty good defensively for a lot of the year. And Florida, had some saltiness about their defense too. So, you mentioned 4 interceptions on the road for Bo Nix. One of them is in one game, or 3 of them were in one game. The Florida game was 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. You look at the LSU game. He and Joe Burrow both threw 1 touchdown, 1 interception each. Both were sacked 3 times. Burrow had like 300-something yards and 30-something completions. Bo Nix didn't put up nearly that, 100-something yards and far less completions. Joe Burrow was obviously probably the best player in college football last year and had an elite receiving core too. Wouldn't say Bo Nix had that. So I do think some of it was competition last year. Some of it was he's a freshman, so, and like you said earlier, Wes, I think small sample size. So, could it play in a little bit? I mean, is it tougher to play on the road than at home? I think in a lot of cases, yeah. But this South Carolina team isn't up to the standard of what those 2 teams that we're talking about, the road losses last year, where you get those 4 interceptions from. They're not LSU from last year. They're not Florida from last year. Not to say it won't be a challenge for Nix, because it could be, particularly if the offensive line's not playing well for Auburn. But I don't know that I don't know that it's a huge storyline to me personally, going into the game.
Yep, and we'll certainly see how it plays out. As Russ says, got to wrap up Tank. Tank Bigsby being a guy we're all familiar with. I think if you follow South Carolina recruiting at all, you've heard the name Tank Bigsby. Certainly on the all-name team, I would say he's a national all-name team, not just a conference.
Oh yeah,
all SEC name team. Tank on a national all-name team, but also, man, I mean, he's very quickly, Brian Matthews said it yesterday, he's very quickly maybe become their best offensive weapon. And, dude, I went back, Georgia game, dude was like their leading rusher, leading receiver, and leading return guy.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you look and he's physically, he can hold up catching the football and rushing the football and doing all the stuff in the return game with a lot of reps, basically, and has been able to hold up as a freshman playing in this league so far. Which I think, again, probably to sort of combine a couple of things here, Kevin Harris versus Auburn's linebackers, and that was one of my keys as well. Basically, this Auburn front, and we talked about it yesterday. Brian Matthews said, the linebackers aren't the biggest. They're very athletic. I don't know if you can go sideline to sideline against these guys much unless you use some type of misdirection to get them going the wrong way. They're going to run sideline to sideline. But can a Kevin Harris wear down these Auburn smaller linebackers as this game progresses? Can South Carolina in this sort of more power-oriented rushing attack wear down this front? A front, Chris, that really has not rotated a lot of guys on the defensive line so far, certainly not successfully. Now, defensively, they're going to be getting some guys back, certainly in the secondary. So then the other side of that, though, dude, is Tank Bigsby. Similarly, I mean, this guy brings energy. He's tough to hit. He's tough to bring down. He's going to be trying to wear down South Carolina's front as well. And who sort of wins that little battle within the battle, even though they're never – I always think it's interesting when you talk about football matchups. They're not going to be on the field at the same time. So there's really no Tank versus Kevin. But as far as Kevin versus the Auburn linebackers and Tank versus South Carolina's linebackers, I mean, you kind of got to feel Ernest and Tank are going to be meeting in the hole quite a bit. And then, Harris and McClain are going to be meeting in the hole quite a bit. And who's surviving that in the fourth quarter is going to have a pretty good chance.
Yeah, I mean, Will Muschamp talks a lot about Kevin Harris and how as the game goes along, he gets better because people are, he loves to say there's nothing soft to hit on him, but people get tired of trying to tackle the guy. Some similarities with Tank. They're different types of backs, but Tank has really shown that he does not mind contact. He'll welcome it. He can get around guys. He can run through guys. He can run through contact, break tackles. And so for South Carolina, they've got to get into, don't let him get in that rhythm. Don't give him that many opportunities. Get into gang tackling opportunities. Get him on the ground when you can. Get Auburn into some what you want in this game is to not let it be a game that Auburn can dictate on the ground, right? You want 3rd and 9 where you can try to get Bo Nix into some situations where Auburn's probably going to be passing the football, and then you can try to tee off and see if you can exploit some of these perceived, chinks in the armor up front. That's what you want. And so a key to that obviously is going to be slowing Tank. I think he's going to have some plays in this game. Auburn's going to make some plays offensively with the skill guys that they've got, but just limiting them, not limiting explosive plays, not letting him break tackles, not getting worn down on the ground, letting Auburn dominate in that fashion.
Yeah, let's hit a couple of our questions here, Chris, before we get rolling too far. There's a question earlier I'm going to go try to bring up from Peter, I think. Yeah, there it is. So Peter says lots of restaurants and other things are opening up fully lately. Any idea when we might be able to get more into the stadium and help with that home feel? Chris, I don't think that's going to happen necessarily anytime soon based on what you're seeing around the league right now. I mean, you look and even whether it's right or wrong to put more people in the stands or not, I don't even want to get into it and debate it, and everybody's going to agree or disagree on that, and that's fine. But just from the perception of it, Nick Saban has COVID. Florida is canceling a game this week because of COVID. Ole Miss is in a situation right now where it's going through their team as well. This really, and to answer your other question, I believe that's still up to the state, and South Carolina would have to get approval for any new plan. They had to get approval from the state for their current plan. Just like basketball, both men's and women's basketball, they'll have to submit a plan as far as fans go for those games as well. So I honestly think you're probably looking at 2021 and next season before you have many more fans in the stands. Is that the vibe you get as well, Chris? Have you heard any talk about trying to get more people in there, I should say, for the final half of the schedule?
Yeah, so I haven't heard anything, number one. And number two, so here's something to, I think, consider. I'm not haven't been involved in any litigation on this, so I'm not trying to lawyer it. But what I do know is, recently it was announced that, as the question said, restaurants had the ability to go to 100%. What I heard that we were told by someone, I think in the restaurant business, was that you could open up to 100% capacity if you could still distance. You still had to follow. It's not like open up and just pack everybody in there. So when you're thinking about a packed stadium, you're still going to need to, under that order, you're still going to need to be able to distance. Now, could you get 20,000 more people in the stadium and still distance properly? Yeah, probably. But so far there hasn't been anything that we've heard no indications that we've heard about trying to put more people in the stadium. And you're exactly right, man. We could argue both sides until we're blue in the face, or let everybody argue about whether or not that's a good idea. But organizations like the SEC, like the NCAA, any organization, they do have to worry about PR and perception and things like that. And that's why you're exactly right. I mean, how much egg did Dan Mullen have on his face when he talks about packing the stadium, and then the next day his team has a COVID outbreak? Now, are they related? No, not necessarily at all. But he took a lot of heat for it. And so organizations typically think about things like that.
Yeah, no doubt. For Jay asking, nothing new today on Jalen Brooks. Still wait and see on that as far as we know. So we'll continue to wait, as is almost always the case with the NCAA. Should we go to Recruit of the Day here, Chris?
Let's hit Recruit of the Day.
Actually, why don't you tell everybody real quick about the Game Day Chair?
Yeah, so the Game Day Chair is from Affordable Medical Equipment, local company right there in West Columbia. Chris opening a new shop soon, still working on it. Looking forward to getting out there and bringing you some more thoughts and content on the Game Day Chair. But if you want to check it out, super comfortable, awesome Game Day Chair. It's a Netflix chair. It's a posting on Gamecock Central chair with your laptop, whatever you want it to be. But from the comforts of your home when you're watching the games, college football all day, NFL, whatever you want to watch, check out the Game Day Chair. Go to affordablemedicalusa.com. It's called the Maxi Comfort Cloud with Twilight technology, which is the lay flat, zero gravity position. Get rejuvenated, get comfortable. Check out the Game Day Chair. The link is in the YouTube description as well. So we appreciate their support, and we would love if you guys would check out their product.
Chris, do you have our Recruit of the Day's stats still in front of you?
I can effort those very momentarily.
All right, so no surprise here. But Recruit of the Day for this week, or Recruit of the Week. I don't know why I keep saying Recruit of the Day. Recruit of the Week is our man, Gunnar Stockton. Yep. And, I mean, when you have limited, not everybody's playing, and the fact that it's a quarterback, I mean, there's opportunities, right, to put up big plays and big numbers. And that's what Gunnar just keeps doing. So Gunnar Stockton is, again, our Recruit of the Week. What are those stats for him, Chris?
So his high school won big over East Jackson, 70-36. So Gunnar had 415 passing yards. He was 18 for 22. And he also had a total of 6 touchdowns, which he's typically done via ground and air. So you'll see in his highlights, he's got, obviously showing off the skill set with some of both, some runs. See the touchdown run here, some passes. Obviously a dual threat guy, and another huge week for him. I think he had one maybe a week or two ago where he scored, 7 touchdowns, Wes? So he's certainly put up some huge numbers this year.
He's kind of gotten to the point already, Chris, as a junior. It's like it's kind of like if LeBron James scores 25 points and then has 10 boards and 10 rebounds, it's just like, okay, well, he's LeBron James.
Yeah.
So that's just like what he's supposed to do. Like if just a random kid scored 6 touchdowns in a game, they'd be like, they'd be like calling their grandma after the game, talking about grandma scored 6 touchdowns. Gunnar rushes for 3 touchdowns and runs for 3 touchdowns. Like every week. It's just expected. Yeah.
It is. It's absurd. So he's on his way. We'll have to do like a record check to see how close he is. Entering this season, he had a chance to break some records. And I would think if he keeps up this pace that he's certainly going to have a chance to do that. But, yeah, it's almost an every game occurrence. For him to have a more pedestrian game is rare. They did have one this year against Jefferson, which features Malachi Starks, who's really, really good, 2022 prospect out of Georgia that South Carolina's offered, a bunch of others. And that was a really good football team. And Gunnar didn't have a huge game that game, but shoot, that's a rarity. And I think his team was a little bit probably overmatched that week. But they've got a good squad. They're putting up a ton of points with Jabo Shaw there as the head coach, and Gunner's certainly having a huge season again.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit again because we have had some questions there on the board about the running game, about running backs and what South Carolina's approach will be moving forward. Chris, from what I've heard, they're very excited about Caleb Juju McDowell, the other commitment for 2021. Obviously, still committed. They lost Interior Brown. That was sort of expected. But when you look at that running back room right now, the conversation, because of the emergence of Kevin Harris, I would say has kind of changed. And it looks a little bit different. We knew they would have Marshawn Lloyd back next year, but to have back Kevin Harris and Marshawn Lloyd, plus a Deshaun Fenwick, a Zaquandre White would be back, Rashad Amos a year older, then add Juju McDowell to the mix as well. I think you really – now, that's not to say they won't take another running back if an absolute just stud pops up and wants to come. They're not going to turn him down, especially if it's a speedy guy, because they want to add speed. That's one thing I think they're still lacking. We've talked about this from the very beginning. 2021 class, getting faster has been a huge priority for them. But I think you look at McDowell, and Rivals was actually at his game this past week, and you look at him, he's not the biggest dude in the world, but he is incredibly explosive. And that's something that I think we're going to see. I'm going to try to pull this up right now if it'll work. I think he's a guy that is going to help South Carolina next year. And I'm hoping – is that audio going over our voices right now, Chris?
I hear it very quietly.
Okay.
Sort of in the background.
What are your thoughts, Chris, on McDowell?
So I think, and for those of you who are not on Gamecock Central, you should check out this piece because Chad Simmons is actually talking over it and has some pretty cool thoughts. He's seen McDowell a few times. So he's an interesting prospect because, like you said, he is not the biggest guy, and he can run away from some guys at the high school level. I don't think he has like elite speed, but what he is he's elusive. He's got some versatility. He can catch the ball. He runs the ball tougher than you would think with his size because he's built so big in the lower body. We talked about it on some previous shows where, he's got a 600-pound squat. Now that may be a high school squat, as I might call it. Where is it a 600-pound squat in college? I don't know, but the kid can throw up a bunch of weight. He's extremely strong in the lower body, and that's why at this level he breaks more tackles than maybe you'd even anticipate. But he's pretty good in space. He can even run between the tackles. And he's a versatile guy, and I think he's someone that South Carolina could use in a variety of ways and could be an interesting prospect for them.
Yeah, and I think you like, from what Chad has said, you like the energy. Like, this is one of those kids that brings, as we talk about when we talk about Zaquandre White, he brings some juice. He brings something to the room, to the huddle. You already have a really nice running back room, from a personality standpoint, or at least from a standpoint of being good, good kids and guys that get along well. And I think someone like him comes in, probably can help potentially in the return game if you need it. You get him outside in space, maybe can be a slot guy as well. I think there are a number of different ways that you could use Juju McDowell within this offense. And, and like I said, we'll see how quickly he's ready. But just from a sort of little different skill set standpoint, I think that's one thing you're always trying to stack in recruiting is guys that bring a little bit different something to the table. And I think you look at Juju McDowell, and he has that. Mm-hmm. Before we we'll talk about a little bit more recruiting, but before we get to more South Carolina recruiting, I've got to ask y'all, have y'all seen the commitment video going around on Twitter right now from Christian Zachary, defensive end out of Georgia? If you have not, everybody don't close this page, but if you're on a computer and you can open another tab, go to twitter.com/rivals. Chris, I would like to explain this to everyone, but I don't really know if I know how.
Can't find the words. It is indescribable in my book.
Do you want to give it a shot, or?
No, I do, but I don't have anything. I mean, I really don't. I think the person I thought of that could lend something to this, and maybe you have something. Do you have anything?
Well, I know you're going to say Kev Roche.
Yes. So I've got to find. So Kev Roche, if he has not already seen this, will be sent a link later, and I will ask him to give his breakdown as only he can, and I'm sure he'll come up with something fantastic. But this, so correct me if I'm wrong. This is a commitment video, and the school choice is not actually revealed here, right? Not to play spoiler.
Yeah, and I don't know if we're going to be able to play the entire thing because it's like 4+ minutes. But this is the most interesting commitment video I've ever seen.
Yes.
And even and you know what? I'm not bagging on it. Like most commitment videos these days end up being sort of similar, same deal. I worked really hard. I'm going to push around some weights, and I'm going to show that I'm working out. Here's some video of me running around catching a football. And hey, I'm committed to so-and-so, right?
Right. Yeah.
So A+, 4.0 GPA, 5 out of 5 stars on the creativity.
Oh,
I'm not knocking that. Whatever your way of rating something is, 100%. Dig it. It's different now, as those of you who are watching can see. But then the and Howard says some anime stuff there. I'm sure there are some references here that I just don't get. Like I'm sure as I was watching, it was sort of one of those things. Y'all know as you get older and people bring up, like if you see kids say stuff and you're like I don't know what that means. So I was like, there's probably some references in here that I'm just not getting. And Jesse, the kid's name is Christian Zachary, Georgia defensive end. Go check it out. So, I mean, there's some like true, what's the word? Like production value to this thing.
yeah.
It's not over yet, y'all. There's some true production value to this thing. Dramatic music, which I'm not playing so that we can talk. But the interesting thing was that he then committed to the 7. Is that right?
I'm sorry. Yeah, the way you said that was funny. Yes, he did. Yep.
But then did not. And it's. I mean, I guess it's doing what it was meant to do, which is get people talking. And I know, obviously, we're sort of all South Carolina all the time. All we generally talk about on the show is South Carolina. But this one was so different. I had to share. I mean, but dude, look at these graphics. Like this is next level.
It's intense. There's no doubt. People on the podcast version are like, "What are y'all talking about?" If you're on the podcast,
I'm gonna cut this part out for the people that are just seeing audio or hearing audio. Good grief, cut that out too. But it's they're not gonna have any idea what's going on if you can't actually see it. But
and that's the 7, I guess, right?
I mean, cool logo.
Yeah.
So,
dude, this guy's gonna be all over the name, image, likeness. This cat's gonna own it.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah.
So Chad Simmons, who again, I say does as good a job as anybody with covering recruiting in Georgia. He's got an interview up. And Chad handled this as well as you possibly could. And the headline is Christian Zachary commits ?
Yeah.
And did I say Christian Zachary or Zachary Christian? I'm not sure. His name is Christian Zachary.
Yeah.
I don't know if I said that right earlier. But he refers to himself as Reverend 7 on Twitter, which is why the whole 7 thing is there. So Chad and the final 7 are Alabama, Colorado, Georgia, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. Chad talked to Christian Zachary, and he says, quote, "I've always been committed to the 7. It was up to other schools to make themselves the 7. However, they were unsuccessful. To those that know me and have learned through all my posts what I'm about, it should be pretty clear where I've chosen to continue my career in education. For everyone else, it will be revealed post haste."
Yeah,
I don't know what that means. I got nothing, but I had to share that because
phenomenal.
if we were making, sometimes Chris and I talk about this, hey, what was the strangest recruitment you've ever followed? I really sort of wish this guy had been considering South Carolina, because he would probably have just jumped to the top of the list for the most interesting recruitment to follow ever. And now I'm curious. I've had no reason to really follow him. I think he had an early offer from South Carolina, right?
He did. He was a guy that we were tracking a little bit early on, but not in the last, several months or so. We have not been.
Yeah, so doesn't count as far as being one we followed, but still, just that's cool. And now, like I said, I want to see where he ends up. We shall find out. All right, let's talk a little Carolina recruiting. I know, Chris, segue, you had an insider report earlier this week about the latest on some guys. Is there anything everybody needs to know from that insider report that you want to, without giving away the farm, that we can hit on here?
Yeah, so, one is that Brandon Jennings, a linebacker decommitted from Florida State, someone that South Carolina is going to, they've been trying to communicate with, talk with someone close to Brandon Jennings, familiar with that recruitment, that told me that it was still too early to know, which school may end up being the school or a school that's in the mix really heavily. Chad Simmons, who's also covering Florida now too for Rivals.com, I believe he said today that the kid was going to decide sometime soon. So it looks like he might be having an outright flip situation. If that was the case, I wouldn't anticipate South Carolina, but we'll see what happens there. Another thing was there's a current FSU commitment, Omarion Cooper, a defensive back who's been communicating a lot with South Carolina. He's still technically committed to FSU, but he's really completely open. So that's a guy to watch for out of Florida. One other note, I mentioned in the insider report that before he released the top 6, but Tevin White, who's a 4-star running back from Virginia, actually put out a top 6 today, and South Carolina was in it. He actually drove through Columbia recently. Again, no official or unofficial visits are allowed to be made, but if a kid wants to drive through campus and get out and walk around, not meet with anybody, they can do that. So Tevin White actually did that last weekend, and South Carolina's in his top 6. So he's a 4-star Rivals 250 guy, pretty good player, and a guy that seems like we'll be tracking going forward.
Yeah, the interesting thing about, again, running backs right now, Chris, is that, Carolina, I would say, is shooting for the fences.
Yeah.
With that class. And they're already in on a number of just really good-looking players at the running back position, Tevin White being one of them. And Tevin, so he's from Virginia, right? So he's not able to play right now.
Yeah. Yep. So season's moved to spring up there. So
yeah, which will be interesting. But maybe we'll be able to get to some games that we wouldn't have otherwise gotten to. This is a kid that I think does a little bit of everything for them. Obviously, you see right here playing some receiver and sort of versatile guy, speedy, really nice offer list already. Here you see him out of the backfield again, and someone I would say probably to at least keep an eye on for this class. I think he's still figuring things out, but has obviously, if you're driving around going to different places on your own, and Columbia makes that cut, that has to, Chris, be some symbol of some real interest, I think.
Yeah, I think so. This is probably a guy that whenever recruiting is reopened, which is, man, it's got to be at some point, I would anticipate this being a guy that they can get back on campus to have sort of a more proper visit. He's also friends with, not same school, I don't believe, but he's also friends with another back from Virginia in the 2023 class, Ike Daniels, that South Carolina has offered. So probably going to be able to get both of those guys back on campus for more of a proper visit, when the timing is right for that.
Yep. Travis, yeah, you're late, but if you, as soon as we're off the air, man, you can always go back and watch the rest of the show from the beginning. So, yes, that's some recruiting stuff. I think I don't know, there's not really a whole heck of a lot else on recruiting right now. They're still going at it. Obviously, they're still recruiting, trying to finish off this class. But that's a good little update there. And no, Shane, I did not drink myself silly last night watching the Braves. The Dodgers bats did wake up, but hey, we're still up 2-1. So we'll see. We'll see. Baseball, everybody's freaking out, and I'm not going to go. I promise I'm not going to go all into this, but some people are freaking out about it's one game, y'all. And yeah, it's 15-1, but that's fine. It restarts today. So we'll see. We just need Bryce Wilson to pitch well. Any new news on Jamar Brown? No, it's been very quiet. I know, Chris, I asked you off the air yesterday if you'd heard anything. I meant to check on that. I really haven't heard anything new on him either. Have you?
Nothing new. I'm curious to see. I know Will Muschamp has said, that he's not really going to be discussing injuries going forward, but there have been a couple occasions where he's given a little bit about that on certain guys. And so I'm curious to see if at Carolina Calls tonight during his call-in show, maybe he runs down sort of the state of the team in an opening statement, or just at any other point in the show. Is he going to say, hey, we might get Jamar Brown back? Maybe he doesn't. Maybe, that's something that he is fine with Auburn saying, he, just taking a guess on that. But I haven't heard anything specific there. I do know, South Carolina, they've been in okay shape from an injury standpoint, right, from the guys that we knew were going to be available. So, aside from Jamar, people were wondering about Israel McQuamu. Alex Huntley's another one that I believe is getting closer to returning. I don't know that it would be this weekend. Obviously, he'll have to get back up to speed, but was running around and stuff like that last I heard. So,
Craig asked about the Hargrove kid. I guess you're talking about what was it, Travian Hargrove. Yeah. South Carolina had offered. They were really, he was probably one of, I would say, about 4 or 5 guys at one point that were, you would say, most likely to take the 2 spots at the time. I have not heard his name come up, since then, since South Carolina. Now, do they reach back out? Do they stay in touch? I don't know. But again, I think if they do take another running back, it's going to be a speed guy, and it's going to be a can't miss type player. So we'll see. I mean, you can't rule out that they may circle back around, but I think there are some greater needs positionally than running back for this class. So if you sort of look at the running back room for next year, you're in good shape, and it sort of allows you to go ahead and look ahead to 2022. And then I think, there's some national guys, but then I look right in the backyard here with CJ Stokes, man. That's a guy you want to add speed, and we've seen his recruitment take off a little bit. I think Stokes is someone that you want in your class if you're South Carolina. You can't let a guy that fast right in your backyard sort of pass by, in my opinion. So I think you want CJ Stokes in your recruiting class. Let's see. Let's hit a couple more questions before we get out of here. Trey asked about the battle armor videos. Has South Carolina stopped doing them? Justin King responded on Twitter last week. Chris, do you remember exactly how he said it? He basically said they're a little short-handed right now because I believe there's a hiring freeze, and they've had some guys in the creative media department in-house, at South Carolina that have left for other opportunities. So they've been a little shorthanded. Justin said they would try, I believe, to get them out each week, but I didn't really say for sure. He didn't promise it.
Yeah. He said that's pretty much how he put it. They're down a few team members and, had to make some tough decisions. Obviously, they've got a lot of different projects, and those things are very time consuming. So I guess that's one of the things that they've had to cut, at least at times, during this season. So we don't really know if there will be another one this year or if it'll be each week or just every now and then or not at all. Don't have a great feel or information about that.
Yeah. And if anybody's curious, I can tell you black helmets, garnet jerseys, garnet pants. So if there is a video, I guess that ruins the reveal. But if you're curious, that's what they're wearing this week. Here's a good question from WJM4. We've seen him on here before. How many points do y'all think it's going to take to win this week?
It's a really good question. I don't think Auburn has the offensive firepower of, say, a Florida. If you don't play well, they're certainly capable of doing it. But we haven't seen that so far this year. So I think, what did Auburn score the first couple of games? I think against Kentucky, it was 29 points.
29-13.
29-13, and Kentucky turned the ball over 3 times in that game, which was sort of their undoing. Against Arkansas, Auburn scored 30,
With a blocked punt in the end zone.
Yeah, right. So Auburn scored 23, So I would say if your offense can put up 27 points, you might feel pretty good about winning. I think, you could think of it similar to the Tennessee game, right? Like South Carolina, they started out well in that game. They didn't do much for a while, and then the second half they played much better. I think somewhere, if you score 28 points, you should be in position to be able to win the game. If you score in the 30s, which would be great for this offense, that'd be a very positive development. Then I would, if you tell me South Carolina's going to score 31, 34 points in the game, I'd probably say they win, right?
Mm-hmm.
You feel
yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think you have to score some certain amount, but I'd say 27, 28 points is going to give you a good chance of winning. Not that you have to do it.
Yeah, that's sort of where my head was at as well. For some reason, y'all, I'm just envisioning 28 to 24 or somebody. Like, I think it's in that range, And I think Carolina's defense will probably play pretty well for the most part, but I also think Auburn's receivers at times are going to be able to make some plays, to spread the field, to create some explosives, which has been an issue. I don't take a whole lot away from Carolina's secondary playing better against Vandy, because I think it's more of a matchup thing about the fact Vandy's just not very good offensively right now. So for me, they got to go show it against a much better Auburn receiving group, which, we'll see if they can. Certainly there is the talent there to do it. What's up, Prentice? Prentice is the father of Nemo Squire, running back recruit there at Dillon. Let's see. We got one more question. Actually 2 more. Does the Auburn secondary, God, I lost it. Anyway, it was basically the Auburn secondary. Are they good enough to be able to lock down South Carolina's receivers, or is there enough of a weakness there for the receivers other than Shy to be able to get some separation? I think that's an unanswered question no matter what the opponent is for South Carolina. I think it's more about them than it is about the opponent. But I was slightly encouraged, Chris, by what we saw from Xavier Legette. And I'm curious to see if Dakereon Joyner can build off of what he did on that long run. Now, I still think there's a difference between getting open and making plays in the passing game. There is running down the sideline on a running play. So I still think there are some questions there as well. But Auburn's DBs, from what I've read, what I've seen, are solid. They're good SEC players. They get some guys back, but they're not locked down. You have no shot type secondary either. Is that fair to say, Chris?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be the best group that South Carolina's played, but I would still answer the question by saying, right now, Shai is the guy who's proven he can get separation, at least on a consistent basis. So I'd say no matter the opponent. It's not like South Carolina was out there just blowing by Vandy, they had some guys wide open at times, but sometimes it was Nick Muse because of how they schemed it or the routes he ran. It's not like they were just open all day, left and right, throwing for 300 yards against Vanderbilt. So I would still say it doesn't even have as much to do with the opponent, right? It's just South Carolina's got to do a little bit better in that department too. So if they can play better, I don't think Auburn is, say, Georgia in the secondary. I think there is potential for them to exploit Auburn back there, particularly if Auburn's not getting a good pass rush, right, which is a question for them. But aside from Shai, it is still a question mark about who can get separation.
And Toby says, how do you see the offensive line shaping up against Auburn? Defensive front, do you think they will get a push? I think this is actually a matchup that South Carolina can win. If you look at what especially South Carolina's done in the running game as the season has progressed, you look at some of the issues Auburn has had. Now, Carolina's had issues protecting the quarterback at times, but Auburn has had issues getting to the quarterback. So there's sort of a weakness on weakness there, which can go either way. A lot of times I feel there will be some sacks in this game. South Carolina has their share, especially third and longs, of sort of where they're getting beat by athleticism, I think. But like we talked about earlier, that's a key to this game is Carolina wearing Auburn down up front. And I think that's something they probably can do. Final question from Ryan Patterson. He actually had this on our Insiders Forum, Chris, and had tagged me. I think you're better to answer this one because I haven't paid as much attention to the guys that Auburn gets back because it's a long list, at least are expected back. And I don't know how Auburn does their injuries. Like if they say they're back or expected back, does that mean they're definitely back? Does that mean, we'll see. How many of those guys are true? Ryan's question was, of the guys that are expected back, how many of them are like difference makers and guys Auburn was really counting on versus sort of being kids that are just more depth or playing but not necessarily big play guys?
Yeah, so I think that there's two main ones. The two main ones that everybody really needs to know are Jalen Simpson at corner, Big Cat Bryant at defensive end. Both of those guys are starters, and so they got back to practice Sunday, I think, for Auburn. So that's a couple guys. They were also missing a couple of guys in the secondary. Jordan Peters, who's a really good special teams player for them, and he's a backup at safety. Marco Domio is another guy that thinking about they're getting back. Austin Troxell he was a guy that was going to start the Arkansas game, and he got banged up in practice that week. But he was expected back at practice. We haven't heard for sure like how much he's done, what his health level is. But if he is available for the game, then he could be a starter along the offensive line. So that may be another guy back for them.
And I mean, dude, they got a kid named Big Cat Bryant. Like that's all name. This Auburn team, like Big Cat Bryant was born to play at Auburn. I feel like that's that's his official name on the roster, right?
Yeah, it is. It is.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
All right, y'all. So, like I said, we're hoping to have SEC Stat Cat and those guys on tomorrow. Otherwise, we will be just chatting about the game, final thoughts. So, y'all bring it. Think of your final questions. And what are we thinking tomorrow, Chris? 2?
Yeah, I'm thinking 2 is probably going to be the move.
All right, so probably 2 o'clock. We will see y'all then. For Chris, I'm Wes. Hope y'all have a great one.
See y'all.